Okay, it's off to the races.
So everyone that's just joining, we're going to get started in about 2 minutes here. I just mentioned how you can talk with one another. Just a quick refresher. You can click on another attendee. Just click on their pod, their square with their video conferencing window, so you can see everyone in the event. And you can actually pair up into groups of 6 and have your own private conversation. So feel free to do that. And then throughout tonight's session, you can either raise your hand by click on the bottom right. There's a hand icon that operates like you're in a classroom, like you're simply raising your hand to come up on stage. If you do raise your hand, we can bring you up on stage here, and you can either ask the guest speaker tonight or Professor Gould a question, or you can just make a general comment or share some insight. What we'd also be happy to welcome is any text questions. So to the left of your raise hand icon, there's a question icon you can click on, and you can submit a text question that way, and we can publish that, read the question aloud, and answer that question for you. There's also instant messaging amongst attendees in the room if you click on the instant message. Sherry replied back, "Hey, Sherry, how are you?" So I saw that instant message. And additionally, to activate your webcam or your microphone, you're going to take your mouse, you're going to hover over yourself, and then you can select your webcam and your microphone. So we'll be good to go. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Hi, Sean.
Hi. Sorry, I'm late.
So this is Christopher's up on stage with us.
Hi, Sean. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
So what I'm going to do is once we get started, I'll introduce you, but I do have to run the slides. So you're going to say, next slide, next slide.
No problem. No problem.
We're not there yet. The final version will be able to do that, so that will be good. All right, let's just wait about another minute or so. There's still people coming on, so and then we will get going.
John, you want to just open up a private IM with me real quick, just so we have that, in case we have any questions or comments in the chat. I can feed you for tonight.
Okay. Let me get Sean off of here. There you are there.
John, you're good. You don't have it. There is, John, Sean, if you'd like to, there is an instant message feed. You can say hello to the room if you click on that. It's on the bottom right. There's just a little, it's completely up to you. You can use it.
Okay, Christopher, I got that up there. Okay, we're up to 13. That's good.
So if I maximize the presentation, do I still see that? Yeah, it looks like it's still staying. Okay, good.
Yep. There is a raised hand. Okay. Karen, do you want to speak? So let me. Can I bring one?
Yeah, take me off and bring up Karen. So just stop my broadcast and then bring up Karen.
Karen, are you there? There you are. Did you have a question, Karen? Hello?
Hello. No, I don't have a question. I was just making sure that you saw that I was in. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, good.
That's
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so why don't we get started? Welcome to everyone. The presentation, one of the things that you will be able to do is, as you see everyone down there, and those of you who heard Christopher at the beginning, and Christopher, you want to move around and connect with people, you will be able to form little groups and talk while we're doing the presentation if you need to. If you do have questions, what you can do is you have two options there. You can put a question. There's one right now. Karen just put a question. Hello, this is Karen. Okay, good. I saw Karen making sure I'm on. You are on. So you can raise a question to me or to Sean. When we go through, I'll be able to monitor the questions and put them up. Then eventually, if you want to come up on the stage and talk to either one of us, you'll raise your hand, and then I will bring you up and spotlight you, and you'll come up on the stage. So we'll let you know when maybe you should be able to do that. And then also, I will monitor the questioning, and Christopher from Shindig will be migrating around there, probably introducing himself to you, so you get a sense of what this platform is all about. So with that, we are going to get started. Before I introduce Sean, what I do want to do is, one of the things I want all of you to remember is that the purpose of our design process basically will be these three things for your projects. And the first one is designing the physical space. Again, I want you to explore the architecture of your projects, what they might look like, etc. Understanding how physical space interacts with both learning and productivity of both your instructors and also students and parents, whoever might be in that building. And that's going to be the central focus of tonight. Sean will be taking you through the work at his architectural firm that's doing quite a bit of work around the world related to sustainable schools, interesting buildings. He'll talk to you about how the educational theory interfaces with the design principles. So these are the things that I feel will be very important to help your team in thinking about these. And then the other two things, as I talked to you before, is that you need to develop and think about the type of leadership skills that are going to make this environment sustainable for people to be able to lead in a different type of architectural design building, one that the school itself becomes a learning lab for all the people involved. And then finally, the last thing your team will be working on, and we'll be discussing this over the next several weeks, is, okay, so you have this really cool idea. Well, the question is, from a leadership point of view, how do you create the implementation strategies that are necessary for this to become a feasible study down the road? So again, I just wanted to make sure that you remember what we're doing here. So we're going to focus on number one, the design of the physical space, information flow within the system, and how people work within these systems. So with no further ado, Sean, I'm going to turn this over to you, and all you need to do is tell me when to flip the slides.
Okay. I think I can handle that. Thanks, John. Thanks for inviting me as well. Certainly an exciting opportunity to talk to the group here about school facility design. Just by way of quick introduction, I am what we call the practice area leader for the primary and secondary school design practice here at Perkins Eastman. So the first few slides are just a little bit about us, and so you understand where we're coming from. But we are a mid-sized architectural practice in this day and age, but we've got a number of offices around the world. One of the distinctive things about our practice, which I've got the pleasure to lead here, is that we do practice internationally, which is somewhat unusual for a school design practice. So you can see, that's great. Follow my lead here. So we've had the opportunity to work around the world, from Washington, D.C., where I'm speaking from right now, to Cairo, as you can see, to a number of campuses in China, and a number of other locations, to accumulate about 160 school projects around the world. And we'd like to color in where we've been, on the map here. This actually is aging a little bit, and we checked off school in Germany just last week. So, we're starting to hopefully practice on almost every continent that has a significant educational investment at this point in time. So the reason why that's important is that we do tend to see a lot of trends globally, I think, and have conversations about where education is going and how school facility design should be achieving what we like to think of as high performance school design. That said, out of those 160 schools, we're quite proud that every is a very specific response to local needs, while still dealing with global trends as well. And the balance of the presentation after the next one or two other slides really start to address a framework that we've developed to have that conversation. That said, we do like to write a lot about what we do. That was what the slide was there. So a number of articles and other things that, if you're interested in, I'd be glad to share, ranging from sustainable design and, how that impacts the learning environment to the International Baccalaureate and other pedagogical and curricular frameworks that influence a lot of the work that we're undertaking around the world. And I think this is the final slide before we jump into the framework, but as John was illustrating, sustainability is a very powerful idea for us, and it means some very rich and deep things that I think are not quite often credited with a sustainable design. So this is just one example of a building that was certified by the U.S. Green Building Council as one of the more sustainable schools in the world at this point. But I think the more powerful idea of sustainability is really captured in the bottom line. And while we can discount test scores as a metric, perhaps the real goal of sustainable high performance school design is to truly impact educational outcomes, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So these are just some of the metrics that are coming out of that building, which was a replacement school for a very historic school. So graduation rates are up, enrollment rates are up, test scores are up. There's a greater sense of safety, in this very urban inner city campus, as our administration might talk about it. But this idea of a sense of community as a really powerful way of impacting those educational outcomes are some of the things that we're after, and the faculty and surveys and other feedback devices that we're using are proving out that the building is enhancing all those attributes that we think do impact those educational outcomes. So the balance of the presentation is actually a presentation that I often do with the leadership of some of the schools that we're working with. And it gets to a framework that I think is useful towards asking the right questions when you're starting to think about, what are those themes and best practices that really should start to inform the design of the educational environment. And this is a work in progress, so I'd be glad to hear your thoughts. But after 20 years of practicing, I find that if I can get the right questions asked about 5 themes and then also get appropriate responses to them, we can start really designing a well-considered learning environment for an appropriate school that's both responding to these global trends, but then is also of the place that it's in. And one of my colleagues likes to underscore the of in that sentence, that you can certainly drop something into a locale and have it be alien, and that's certainly not what we're after. In our work around the globe, we want something to be very much of the place. But the 5 themes are on the left: so learning, teaching, community, sustainability, and culture. And the balance of the presentation, touches upon each of these themes. And oftentimes, what we'll do when we're working with leadership or faculty on individual campus is, we'll run through a presentation like this, and then we'll ask them, to focus on each of these 5 themes and talk about them very specifically, with regard to what they are trying to accomplish. So learning is, obvious, amongst the primary goals here, but this section starts to discuss, how are the developmental aspects of a child's age influencing the design of the environment, how they might understand the material at hand, the physical stature of the students, the social and emotional mindset that they're ready to learn, and where they are relative to their peers, towards older children within the learning environment. But some of this, the next few slides, next please, start to talk about again, many of the skills that I'm sure are well familiar to you, that many people have posited about what those skills are, and how do we foster that conversation relative towards that sort of outcome based on the developmental stages that the children are in at this point in time. There's also a lot of conversation going on around how has literacy changed with new media available towards being applied both at home and in the learning environment, and how is that changing the way children might be thinking, or how they might be influenced by those factors here as well, and truly what does literacy mean in this day and age. So exploring some of these ideas with the digital generation that we've got, including my own children. Next. And starting to think about some of the spaces that start to respond to these needs. And so we've just sort of collected a sample here of new sorts of learning spaces that start to emerge, whether there's an evolution of the library media center idea into something that's more creative, less transactional, now starting to be called the Learning Commons. Certainly the idea of multimedia presentations and access to those kinds of resources for children to work within, also to experience in different places, and that media changing the criteria that we design environments with, more hands-on learning, and project labs, maker spaces will come up in the presentation here as well. But the idea that collaboration and is key, and and again that technology is becoming pervasive and sort of seamlessly integrated into the environment. So again, circling back to some of those skills, and some of this gets to the next section of teaching. But again, the maker movement, project-based learning, all of these things, targeted at active learning, relative towards some of the older models that many of our existing buildings were designed to foster. So again, that we've got STEM and other things that are more on the teaching side, but again, an interdisciplinary, integrated, more hands-on, active way of learning being fostered throughout the environment. Next. So again, more spaces, and different kinds of program environments that are emerging, from the conventional spaces. So the maker environments, STEM suites, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, that some of these spaces are really multiple spaces, and creating a system of spaces that are coordinated to provide different resources and different opportunities, including presentations and other places to do long-term projects that you see on the right, being sort of new environments that are cropping back up, or environments that are evolving through time, and this new emphasis on how children learn in the environment and how we can best foster that. So interaction is key. And as we all recognize, learning doesn't happen just in the classroom any longer, but that communication and many of the softer skills happen in throughout the campus, and that we can foster this collaborative environment, both within the formal learning environment and in the informal spaces of the campus as well. So next. So here's an illustration of some of those collaborative kinds of spaces. They range from something that we'll call the heart of the school in the coming slides. So big sort of community gathering spaces. We like to think of schools as sort of learning villages, and so you can use a lot of urban design metaphors of houses and neighborhoods and plazas, town squares, while we start to think of the sort of social network and learning community that we're building. So those community spaces are large scale, like on the upper left, but they can be very small, like in the center top. So spaces that students can sort of just spontaneously gather and collaborate and eat and do all the things that oftentimes older children like to do in some of these spaces. But again, spaces that might even be inspired by the modern workplace, as you see in the lower portion and the center, or and that spaces are multifunctional as well, ranging from places that you can eat, but you can also socialize, and but you can also take advantage of as an extension of the conventional learning environment. Next. So the teaching side is of course complementary, but gets a little closer to the pedagogical influences and structures that we're seeing, again, to achieve a lot of those 21st century skills. So you see a sort of list of things that are commonly discussed here, from career pathways to design thinking, which I think is very current to the John's class, here right now. But again, STEM and STEAM and multimedia and project-based learning, blended learning now, as we're experiencing perhaps even right now, becoming more and more current, even though a relatively new idea with respect to many of the facilities that are being designed, in this day and age. So again, thinking about how people actually experience the work environment, as a model, perhaps, just like I'm sitting in a project-based room within my own office. My desk is 20 feet from here, but is in a much more open and collaborative environment. But there are spaces that allow for different activities to occur, in appropriate acoustical environments and with appropriate resources at hand. Next. And so starting to think about, the idea of multiple modes of learning occurring within individual spaces as well. So you can see sort of classrooms doing a lot of different things in the diagrams in the top, but then a project-based classroom. This happens to be Bowling Green University, who's out front on some of the ideas of really using every surface of the classroom as an opportunity for project teams to work, and sort of challenging the idea that there's a front of a classroom, maybe there's multiple fronts, and really no single focal point, as a conventional classroom might historically be designed. Team teaching also, that trying to get beyond the isolated teachers, within the sort of cells and bells model, as some call it, to create pairs of classrooms and then pairs of classrooms, and things that are shared in between them, and perhaps even teacher workrooms, associated with that model as well. And we'll talk a little bit about this as in different ideas, but even the flexible boundaries between these spaces, as you can see in the photographs of open or closed, to foster those kinds of relationships. Next. And then again, the idea of STEM and project-based learning, pulling multiple spaces together, so it's not just one space working in isolation, but then I think powerfully this idea of that you see in the simple diagram here of planning, designing, testing, making, and a sort of reiteration of that around. And this is how we work as architects, but creating spaces that allow again students to engage in this sort of iterative design process, and design thinking being very powerful. So you have clean spaces, you have dirty spaces, you have digital spaces, you have spaces to present, spaces for cars to roll down. G happens to be called the Raceway because this school was creating cars for in lieu of robots, but this idea that every space is really contributing to that sort of
There's a
design
question right there.
process.
Can you get a question?
Sure.
Yeah. Whoops. Let me bring it back up. Publish it. There we go. She notices a lot of orange and green colors. So
Oh yeah, orange and green. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There's sort of an interesting challenge to designers on the idea of color, and there's the psychology of color is an interesting one to engage, and there is some kind of interesting research done by actually computer interface designers, on how people respond to different colors in particular. And I think the conventional wisdom is that red gets people overly excited, and blues tend to be more calming and appropriate, and green is somewhere in the middle. And I think what the digital designers have concluded is that red might be stimulating, but it's actually appropriate for certain activities. Blue might be calming, and that's appropriate for certain activities. The challenge for an architect is that I don't get to change the colors quite as readily as they do, so I've got to lock into something appropriate. So it's an interesting question as to what the accent might be. The real answer, I think, is don't overdo it with any one color, typically, and you'll be okay. But you'll see different colors throughout, that are responding to some of the cultural issues and other things, that we'll talk about in a moment. STEM and STEAM, again, this is a different kind of way of organizing a science lab. It's really science labs and thinking about different activities as sort of the foundation for an architecture. So again, there are bench spaces shared by spaces where seminars can happen, and small group activities and other things, sort of creating a suite of spaces rather than something that fundamentally is often designed as an island within a building unto itself. So again, thinking about relationships of teachers, relationships of students, and how do we optimize space. Blended learning too, as pedagogy, as I can only believe will be more and more influential as we go. However, most schools are not designed to accommodate it. And I think the workplace is often a good model for this, and also the idea that asynchronous learning is going to contribute greatly to the activity that happens within some of the spaces that we're designing right now, relative towards some things that'll be happening outside of those spaces, or perhaps at home and other sites, and sort of a network of activity around a conventional school campus. Next. And then also thinking about again, the relationships of spaces and small learning communities are commonly discussed, but the idea of neighborhoods, again, of spaces that break down the scale of a campus into spaces that have administrative spaces, collaborative workspaces, conventional classroom spaces, lab spaces, all sort of creating what might be career pathways or academies or small learning communities. Again, thinking differently about this, how an environment scales from the individual to the small group to a medium-sized group to a larger group to the entire campus, perhaps, in increments appropriate, so that a person can relate well to the environment that they're in. Next. And then, of course, that treating teachers like professionals, and giving them the appropriate spaces to collaborate as well. And the model on the right is what we call a flight lounge, inspired by a high-end sort of environment that business people might experience when they move through an airport, that there's a place for them to sit down and perhaps work with their peers while they're in transit, grab a cup of coffee, or break out into adjacent resource space, project space or collaborative space, without disrupting everybody else around them. So again, thinking about community, on a professional community scale as well. And nice transition there. That was accidental, but that we're community that's also embedded within a larger sense of community as well. So we've got again a scaled idea of community that's really critical to creating something that is successful and achieving the outcomes that we're hoping. So we have an emerging global community, of course, that our schools are embedded within, and oftentimes actively engaging other campuses, other locations, traveling to them digitally and otherwise, but that our schools are quite literally embedded in a physical locale, and so engaging them within the larger community and taking advantage of those resources and inviting that community back in, we'll talk about in a moment. And then that the school unto itself is a learning community that we're trying to foster an architecture for as well. So this is a school, just to talk about, again, contextual relationships, called the School Without Walls, which John and I walked through last week, but they're embedded within a university campus here in Washington, D.C. So the idea is that, we don't need to recreate many of the amenities that the university offers. If we struck an appropriate deal, we could use their better auditorium, their student union, their library, their physical education campuses, and start to, again, blur the boundaries around what often would have been an isolated, island of a school, within an urban context that has tremendous resources. And you can see that the Smithsonian's off to the right, and the Kennedy Center is off to the left, and the federal government is blocks away. And so just incredible resources to take advantage of, both by pulling into the school, but also pushing out of the school as well. And then the idea that there are transition points on our campus to invite the community in. So you see public spaces in front of each of these buildings. These are public schools. It might be a different approach on a different independent school, but yet the idea that if you're a parent, these are often the places that you truly engage the school community, not so much in the conventional instructional spaces. It's in these sort of transitional environments where we can create plazas and steps and places to hang out and watch the children play before and after school, and talk to the teachers, coming in and out of the building, as sort of this social glue and way of reinforcing the family's relationship to the institution in many ways. Next. And that happens as you come into the building too. So we have, again, another threshold here. So that's a security barrier, and with current events, again, reinforcing the idea of safety and as a critical piece of school architecture. However, not wanting to create something that feels like a fortress or a police station. Again, this idea of openness and connectivity visually and engagement, being very important, but also that, again, families and students feel welcomed into an appropriate place to learn, and rather have it be a welcome center than a security barrier, being important. But many of our campuses do invite the community in to use those resources. So there are ways to organize the environment with control points to say that this is available to the community, this is perhaps not. So you can see a building and then a campus doing the same kinds of things here. So the sports fields, the pools on the right are available for this community in West Africa, where they might not have those amenities elsewhere in the city, to come onto campus on the weekends and make full use of these tremendous resources that the schools provide. This is about the heart of the school, again, creating that place that is the center of the school community and the physical environment. And you can think of it as a town square or a plaza or some other way of doing that. And there's lots of ways to do it. But you just see some examples here of a large indoor sort of atrium-like space in this one particular school here in Washington, where the lower photograph shows the community. It happens to be Howard University using it for a homecoming event, the same space that you see in the photo on the right. So multifunctional, flexible stairs as becoming stages and other opportunities, again, to think about how can we get the most bang for the buck and getting this active use that we're hoping for with the community coming into our building. And just some examples of that same building, doing a lot of different things, in that same kind of space, from creating tables and or chairs for functions, or galleries, events, and more active ways of using the space, even to inviting the community into the pool again. So this is a different heart, this one's outdoors, but you can see a sort of Spanish steps in the courtyard here of this other high school, in an open air environment, creating sort of a crossroads through the campus, which many of the hearts function as, but it's also this informal place where the school community can come together again and celebrate informally or hang out, as you can see the students doing here, in their small groups as they like to cluster. But one of the things secondary school students like to do is have their small group but still be in the mix, and this allows them to do that. Next up. And then again, thinking about how to organize all the pieces and parts together of a learning community. So whether or not we have lower schools and upper schools and younger children and older children, how do we organize them to create a coherent whole, while again allowing for things to scale appropriately to the the developmental needs of the children. And there are a lot of ways to do that, like the circled things. You can consider neighborhoods all starting to come together to create that learning village, just like our own communities have multiple neighborhoods coming together to create something larger than themselves. Next. And another example of a neighborhood and the kinds of resources that might be within them. So again, an interdisciplinary mix of spaces, formal spaces, informal spaces coming together, such as those that you see on the right, are these kinds of interstitial spaces, again, acting as extended learning environments outside sizes. One of the things, a conventional school building here in the U.S. will have about 30% of its space into circulation. So that's a lot of space doing not a lot if you just treat it simple. The environment is. Did it go? There we go. And yeah, and again, creating from a more conventional model like the prior one to something that's again more work.
Sean, we might be. You're breaking up a little. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, guys, hang on a second. I might have lost Sean here. Let me bring him. It's always good that we have. I'm going to stop the broadcast. Hang on one second. Let me bring him back up. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Lost you there for a second, yeah. Okay.
John?
Yes, can you hear me? Let me bring.
Okay. All right. So we're on the sustainability slide.
Right.
So, all right, good. You can hear me. Okay. So again, sustainability is a very powerful idea, for us. Something that's very rich. Many people think about it as resource conservation at first glance, but I like the U.S. Department of Education had the Green Ribbon Schools Awards program, running for the last few years, and they have sort of three categories. One is resource conservation, the other is healthy, high-performance learning environment, and the third category is the education of the next generation of environmental stewards, and we like to use those classifications as we go forward. So you see that sort of rubric in the lower right here. But one of my other colleagues likes to say, if somebody tells you they're not interested in sustainable design, they're telling you that they're not interested in virtually anything, because it affects virtually every aspect of what we do. So, from the social impacts to the economic impacts to the more conventional environmental impacts, it's sort of an all-encompassing structure for us to think about as we design educational environments. So next, please.
Okay, do you see that question? We have a question about.
As we design, because we do work in so many different climates, it's always important for us to start with a sort of understanding of the local context and how best to respond to that. So solar analyses and where is the sun from. How has vernacular addressed that, perhaps, versus some of modernisms, more
Okay, hang on a second. Sean, can you hear me? I'm losing you again. Stop the broadcast. Let me bring you back up here. Hmm. Hang on, guys.
Hey, folks, give it a second. We're waiting for Sean to get reconnected here. We had a dropout of his internet. He actually is no longer in the room, but he'll be right back, and we'll get right back to regularly programmed session. John, what you're gonna
Yes.
need to do is when he gets back in,
Yes.
just search for him and bring him back on stage. He actually is out of the room, so that's
I
telltale
don't.
sign of a Wi-Fi
Yep.
dropout. So we will. I'll keep an eye out to see when he comes back in.
Sherry, I see your question there. We'll try to get to it. We'll have to answer it. Let's see. Okay, I got that question. This was running so nicely. Still looking for him. And let me call him. That might work.
Sean, could you do me a favor and bring me on and off a stage real quick? Off and on a stage. To stop my broadcast and bring me up in a second. I just want to chat with
Okay.
someone in the audience.
Okay, stop the broadcast. There we are. Okay, Carrie, I hear. All right. Sean is still missing. I tried reaching him on a phone, but his phone is busy. So hang on, guys. Hopefully you're able to chat among each other. I see some of you grouping together, so that is good. Carrie. Carrie, you would know if you're muted, if you can hear me. If you go over your picture, you'll see settings, I believe. They should be the same on your app. All right, let's see. Is Sean back? Nope, don't see him. Just hang in there, guys. Still looking for him.
So, John, I sent Sean the link to log back in, and I think he just opened that email. So let's give him a second to get back in, and we'll figure out what happened with his computer. But he should be logging back in. I'll let you know when that happens.
All right, let me check some questions
All right,
here.
he's back in. He's back in.
Good. So
And I see his webcam. So you can actually, if you want to, you can bring him up with me, or you can bring me off a stage and then bring him up.
a second. There he is. All right. Spotlight.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
you are back, sir. Okay. You ready?
I don't know
All
what
right.
that.
I don't know.
All right. So these are just illustrations of responding to local climate and context. So you can see modern and vernacular. But wellness is certainly a big part of what we're trying to achieve as well. So making active environments, which goes to a lot of different aspects of how you can design to create a healthy place, for children and faculty, of course. And the landscape is a huge opportunity, and even in the harshest of climates, from Saudi Arabia all the way up into the northern climates, we can get children outside, actively learning outdoors with appropriate design. So you can just see examples of really active hands-on learning here, in community gardens. And these next few slides talk about, all the things that we have as resources to fine tune, the interior environment, from natural light and views and acoustics to thermal comfort to indoor air quality and, frankly, what we make the buildings out of, and the fact that, there's not toxic materials, and the construction surrounding them, considering, again, children's interaction with the environment, can mean that they're sitting on the floor, much more frequently than, we as adults are. So here's, quite a few things that you can't photograph very well as an architect, but, indoor air quality and CO2 levels, being one of the fundamental flaws with many of our existing buildings, simply that the air quality would put anybody to sleep. So we study the buildings, as we go in their performance as well. But you can move on from this one, but learning a lot. But then thinking again, as we've got all this tremendous infrastructure that we can, inspire and educate children about, environmental systems, just simply from where the water is going from the roof, into cisterns, and then where it's going, back perhaps into treatment and flushing the toilets, and or irrigating the landscape, or simply how we insulate a building, or how we power a building. There's just tremendous opportunities to learn, about the environment, from the construction technology of our buildings. And then one of the more powerful things is this idea of a building as a teaching tool. Architects like to call it, building on that last idea. But if you can truly get the children to embrace that, So you can have them lead tours of the building, or lead the recycling program, or run the composting program. In many ways, then they start to teach their peers, and they start to teach their parents, and then they start to teach the adults about what it means to live sustainably, within their environment. And then the final category that I think is very localizing is this idea of culture, and it's a challenge for a modern architect in many ways, and particularly an American architect, to address this question, here in the U.S., but also, when we're in another country, to not do this like Walt Disney might do, address culture, but to truly figure out what the true cultural response of an architecture is, whether it's spatial or whether it has different gestures, in the architecture. So as we go through this, can just show you some examples of how to explore that. But again, thinking about that, many of our students, within our environments are global creatures. They're interacting, daily with people, in a very different manner than we would have when we were children. But, in the photograph here, you see, Chinese, children, French children, Canadian children, all collaborating within this campus within China here, but then connecting on the photo with the right, to this idea of global community as well through digital media, becomes very powerful. And then this idea again, though, is what is a local and place-based response? You can see vernacular architecture on the left. This happens to be Lima, Peru. But then a building that we designed on the right, taking some inspiration, not from, recreating that vernacular, but perhaps, gesturing at the power of culture and or color in their cultural architecture. So again, it becomes a powerful question: is what is the right way to integrate, this idea of a local culture? And oftentimes it's in the history of the place. So this happens to be one of the most historic African American schools in the country, here in the U.S. So 8 people on U.S. postage stamps. Celebrate them on the walls, and then celebrate the accomplishment of your alumni in the floor plaques, the wall plaques, and illustrate to the students that you're part of this greater tradition, and that history hasn't stopped. Next.
Hey, can you see that question, Sean?
That you're looking at is now a neighborhood school. It's a high school, but it was historically a magnet program prior to that.
Okay.
And then food and culture and language, all come together very nicely. So there are spaces emerging. So we call food labs, and certainly community gardens, and this sort of flow of health and wellness and food and culture, music, all being celebrated, in this kind of interdisciplinary manner. Becomes a real opportunity in schools, and something that the kids are truly interested in as well. Next. So those are the 5 themes. Sorry for the little discontinuity in the technology here. But again, these are the themes that, over the course of my career, have helped start to articulate design principles, as John was illustrating, of what are we trying to achieve, And before we put pen to paper and start drawing, like we're architects, we can draw very quickly. So, but if we don't really have an understanding of what the goals are, perhaps framed by these 5 themes, we can draw the incorrect solution to the wrong problem. If that's a confusing statement, but you probably get what I mean. So that's.
Yeah, I got another question there for you. Can you read that one?
Hang
on a second, I brought it back up again.
The mixed reviews, is that that's
yes.
Mm-hmm. Office space concept. In terms of open plans, is that what this is about? Yeah, so this is something that, frankly, is why our office is designed the way that it is, and I think it's something that's true in educational environments as well. There's a degree of openness and collaboration, that we're trying to foster, but then one of the largest complaints about modern workplaces is the lack of acoustical privacy in an open plan. How do you have heads down space relative towards collaborative space, I think is a big question for both the learning environment and contemporary workplace. So again, I think designers are struggling with the same themes, in both practice areas. So if that was the question.
Yep. So what I'm going to suggest is, as Sean went through this process, if you have questions that you'd like to come up on stage, what I'd like you to do is raise your hand. I'll bring you up and we can have a conversation up here. So anyone? All right, I see a hand up here. Hang on a second. Sherry, I'm going to spotlight you. You pod.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
So by me, there's a school called the Willowwood School. The Johnsons built it. I don't know if you heard of it. And no, okay. And it's very green. It's in Far Hills, New Jersey.
Okay.
And it's pretty famous around here. And every year they add another grade and it recycles all the water. It's very sustainable. I was just curious. I know it's LEED. It's definitely a LEED building. It's supposed to be pretty innovative. And I was just curious if you had heard about it and who the architect was, because I have no idea.
No, I'll look it up. It sounds interesting. So there are quite a few interesting buildings, that have come up recently. Sidwell Friends historically, their middle school sort of set the pace a few years back, and then, but there are quite a number of really interesting, sustainable learning environments, coming out in this day and age. So,
I actually think John Becker was involved with that school.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yes.
I don't know John Becker, but that's great to know it.
He's my brother.
Oh.
Yeah, we've been talking about him. So there's
school.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there are a couple of really nice schools. Sidwell Friends Middle School, like I said, is one that's probably 15 years old now, but set the bar pretty high. And Discovery Elementary in Arlington, Virginia, our Martin Luther King School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, that just opened, which you saw a couple of images from. So there's quite a few really good examples out there now.
And
just a
also
quick
Pittsburgh, you did Pittsburgh, didn't you? The lab school at
At the University of Pittsburgh, yeah, which was pretty innovative in challenging people to live without air conditioning, and a lot of creature comforts. That architecture, if designed properly, can allow you to do without some of the things that we rely on as crutches in many ways to solve an inappropriate architecture.
And just
Okay.
another quick question. From a cost perspective, I used to be in construction, so I'm in business. I'm not a teacher, and I used to work for Turner, and I did all the schools in Jersey City and Hoboken. And are these type of schools more expensive, or and if so, how much more? Just trying to get a funding perspective on these.
No, I know that's a good question. A lot of the things that you can do to make a building more sustainable don't cost any more. And one of the things that why we do those solar analyses, for example, is if you orient the building properly relative to the sun, which oftentimes means having the long axis on an east-west axis here in Washington, so that classrooms are facing north or south, we can shade them properly, and then the building doesn't overheat. So just simply by orienting it in the right direction, that lack of solar gain on the building allows us to decrease the mechanical systems. So we have a smaller mechanical system, which is often upwards of 50% of the building. But then it also allows us to control the natural light better coming into the building. So we're creating a better learning environment, less glare and other issues, that truly start to impact education positively. This is what we're after. So that's a zero cost solution as long as you can maneuver the building properly, for example.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
So, Sean, let me ask you something so that the teams can think about. What do you see as, from your experiences, one of, I'm going to use the word craziest or most innovative, non-traditional school that they might be able to at least look at, whether it be in the United States or anywhere's on this planet?
Craziest. There was a early childhood school in Japan that got a lot of press a year or two ago, and just has all these amazing climbing structures and things over it. It just looks like, if you're a 4 or 5 year old, it looks more like, just this incredible, inspiring playground. So that's probably one of them. It looks like the children designed it, if they were really, really skillful designers.
I have the TED video for them to watch that. That's that Japanese kindergarten school.
Yeah. It's a great building. So it sort of violates almost every convention, I think that people would imagine. Others that are as provocative as that, I think there's this, the blended learning schools are starting to come out. There's one in California that's integrated with a library. So I think we're starting to see, again, this kind of blurry boundary around conventional spaces. School Without Walls is another example of that. What else would be worth looking at? Yeah. Those are the ones that come to mind right now.
Heather, one question. Heather, you are up on the stage. Your video is not on, but if you have a question, shoot away. Are you there, Heather? Her hand was up, but I don't know. Is your video or is your audio on? Huh. Heather, can you hear? Unmute yourself if you're able to. Slide over your picture and you should be able to see if your mute button's on. Then again, you might not be able to hear me. All right, Heather, if you can do that, raise your hand again. I'll bring you back up. All right, here's another question. Here we go. Oh, this is Christopher. Yes, Christopher. Huh.
I've had enough FaceTime today. Let's share with some other folks.
I just saw a question by your name.
I don't know. I was looking for Heather actually in the room, and if it looks like she doesn't have a webcam, so she hasn't activated her webcam. So Heather, while I'm up on stage, and we'll take a little more FaceTime actually. If you want to activate your webcam, you can click on yourself. Hover over yourself, the little square, your little video conferencing pod, go to settings, and then go to my webcam and select active webcam. Sometimes your browser may pre-block usage of webcam because you have been able to determine that in your browser settings. So if that's the case, you may have to go in your browser and activate to enable that as well. But if you get that up and running, we'd be happy to bring you up on stage. And if not, hit that ask button and you can submit your question as a text, and Sean or John will answer the question for you.
Okay, good. All right, since you've had so much FaceTime, I'm dropping
Take me off.
So let's see. Heather, I see your hand is back up, and I'm going to spotlight you again, and we'll see what happens. Dun, 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 dun. 1, 2, 3. Bingo. Heather, are you there? This has got to be a ghost in the machine. All right, I don't know. All right, Heather, we'll try it again later. So, let me ask a question. Let me see, that's Christopher, he's back up. Let me ask you a question, Sean, for the teams to think about. One of the things they're doing right now is they've been scanning all types of things, environmental things about the future, looking at sustainability issues, and they're going to come up with a design challenge. So, as an architect, when you're confronted with, we'll call a design challenge, generally, how do you guys start? What do you do?
Well, we use what we call a 3-step process. So the 3 steps are sort of simple, but they help sort of clarify what we're trying to do. So the first step's creative analysis. The second step is options. And the third step is the preferred option. So creative analysis is perhaps what you're doing. And so that's an exploration of trying to figure out what the issues are, right? And what you're trying to design to. So that's, goes through all those 5 themes. It starts to think about context, the site, the budget. Maybe some of those things are pragmatic or overly pragmatic. But what the important part of that analysis is it comes out at the end with what are design principles. So that's a statement, of what your goals are, and that, they tend to be, somewhere between 6 and 10 of them, of, here are the 10 fundamental goals of what I'm trying to achieve based on the analysis that I just did. And then you're going to use those goals as a filter to evaluate your design. I'm trying to think of one that we just used, and you could, the heart of the school is quite often one of them. Something is the heart of the school. As you go forward, then you can look at different options, different solutions, and say, I've accomplished 3 of my 5 or 10 goals, in this one design, so therefore it's not so great. This second option's, accomplished 8 of the 10, so okay, pretty good, and relative towards the next option. And the other part that just slipped my mind while I was thinking of that, goes back again to analysis. So part of the creative analysis process is, again, looking at precedents. Who's done something that's of interest, and thinking about why a particular design response is of interest. And it could be because you happen to like the materiality of it, you like the shape of it, but you can parse environments again, into design patterns, and very discrete elements of a building, can be really inspirational. It could be, a monumental stair. It could be the way the inside, blends into the landscape, that might inspire, your own design solutions. Part of what we recognize very strongly is that there's a lot of good ideas and a lot of good designers out there, and that, you don't need to recreate the wheel sometimes, that you can take inspiration, just like a musician will learn, from the canon, and then create, something inspiring, as they become a composer unto themselves.
So one of the things we're looking at in this course, besides, design thinking, is the concept of innovation and creativity. How does that play out in an architect's mind? Those 2 concepts.
Innovation, quite often, I think, again, is built on an understanding of what's come before. Again, I think understanding, how people have solved the problem before, can inspire a new solution. But quite often the innovation comes when you take, these 5 themes and, recognize the individual sort of responses to that. So, it might be a similar solution to, from a sustainability standpoint, but the pedagogy is different, or the cultural response is different, or the site is different and drives, a new and a challenging way. But to respond to a particular problem. Creativity is, sometimes just simply hard work, to get there. But what I think I would encourage people to do, and is, often adults don't draw very much anymore. And when you think about, you go into a kindergarten class and everybody's drawing, everybody's building with blocks, and and quite often that's what architecture school's like. It's like kindergarten all over again, and that's why we enjoy it so much. Draw stuff, build stuff. Study models are amazing. Tools to see things in 3 dimensions. The computer does a lot of that for us now, but it can be a crutch. You can do a lot of things with cardboard. That some of the most amazing buildings in history are created with very simple model materials. Frank Gehry, if you know who he is, if you saw his office is full of all these kind of garbagey looking models, built out of, tin foil and cardboard. And he does the most sculptural, iconic buildings, ultimately when he's done. So I think multiple media, is one outlet to creativity, and so draw, build.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because those of you who are in my Philadelphia group, as I told you, I have ordered all my Lego blocks and I have my clay and I have all that. So you guys will be doing that. But those who are online, obviously, the use of storyboarding and collaboratively working around brainstorming, especially in the digital age, is always the most interesting thing to play around with. So, but that was good. I'm glad you said that, Sean, because one of the things in design thinking, particularly coming out of the Kelly brothers and IDEO, is the ability to think with your hands, because that's very critical.
Yeah, this idea of rapid prototyping is something that IDEO is very much interested in. They will mock up their solution and do it very, very quickly and iteratively.
Yep. Okay. So, well, it is 8 o'clock. I think as you guys think about questions at any time, email them to me, and then I'll send them to Sean, see if he can respond back, just to keep that conversation going. Also, Sean, I might ask you when we do some of our prototyping, if you or any of your team members are available, that if you'd like to take a look at what they're doing and give some feedback, that might be really cool.
Sure. Yeah, people would love that, I'm sure, here. So.
Okay. All right, guys, I think that's basically it. John, I want to thank you very much. This is being recorded, so it will be up for those that who could not make it tonight. Again, we are very happy that you have become involved with us. We also are looking at putting together at the Drexel DC office a group that's going to start looking at these issues that we talked about tonight to get more and more schools and communities interested in exploring the way to redesign what our learning spaces need to be for the 21st century, and particularly to begin to understand the impact of sustainability as a concept in relationship to both design. And as myself, a former superintendent, I know that a lot of times, related to the cost concept, it might be a little bit more to build a sustainable school up front, but the savings over time really make it worth it. So I think that's a concept for you guys to think about also. So that's it, Sean. I want to thank you again, and I will keep you posted on what we're doing. Any of you who are in my virtual class tomorrow, I will have a YouTube video up. I do want to present to you what I presented to the Philadelphia group Friday night so that you have a sense of the scanning. So with that, what I'm going to say is good night to all of you. Again, all you have to do is just come off of this, just leave the space. And I wish you all good night, and I hope you have a good spring holiday weekend. Oh, I see a question. Let me see who that question. That's from Christopher. Christopher wants, I think, spotlight time again. So, Christopher, you're back up here.
I don't want spotlight. There's actually Heather submitted in the group chat her question, so I didn't know if I got it a little late, but I submitted that as a question for her. If you want to publish it, I don't know if you have time. If you're wrapping up, completely understand. Maybe you can reach out to her directly via email or answer. But she did submit a question via the group chat, so I didn't want her to think that we ignored her.
All right, let me just
okay, perfect. And then I got more, and I'm in the picture there. It's from Heather.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I'm just reading through it.
Share. Okay.
So if I'm understanding the question, it's about, I imagine that administrators have a large role in communicating with your team about what they have in mind for these collaborative spaces for learning. With that said, how is that rolled out to the teachers and staff? Yeah, maybe I didn't convey that accurately. Certainly the teachers have just as an active role in articulating the design response as the administration do. We often just work with administrators initially that are responsible for the overall operations of a campus, but then we do just as much hands-on work with teachers and the students and the families as well. So it ultimately, when we come out of sort of a workshop environment, we can put all the pieces together that we've heard from all the different perspectives that are using the facilities. So hopefully there's consensus on what we're trying to achieve. Sometimes there's not. But that's less frequently the case. But again, it is an iterative process. So, you go through that analysis piece and we sort of play back, here's what we're trying to achieve. And that's how you build consensus around, ultimately the goals that we're after in an architecture as we go forward.
Yeah, and I also think that's part of your leadership challenge that all you guys have to think about. Because as I said to you, one of the things you have to address in the project is the leadership. How do I bring people in? And if you remember, when you think about Peter Senge's work, if you think about Otto Scharmer's work, the concept of a person who can develop a shared sense of purpose probably is the better leader. And I think that's how an administrator, brings that in. Jose, are you up there? Can you hear us? I have you up on stage.
Jose's no, he also didn't have a webcam.
Oh, he did not. So he is the other instructor out in California.
But Andrea has a webcam. Lydia has a webcam. Jen has a webcam. David. So if there's anyone else, Karen, Richard, if any of them would like to come up on stage, feel free.
Yeah, if you want to before we end, that's fine. Christopher, I don't know. I keep seeing you up here. That is so funny,
Well,
man.
whenever I ask a question, you bring me up. I get it.
Oh, I see this thing. It's there.
I'm highly coveted. I know. I understand. No, I get it. Sean, thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it. I hope everyone had a great session. Thanks for fighting through that little technical snafu. And John, I'll let you wrap. I know you already did, but we can do it again.
Yep. So thank you. And as I said, you guys can depart at your leisure. We will stay on just in case you do have a question that pops into your mind. If not, good night and see you tomorrow. Who said that? Was that Walter Cronkite?
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And everyone, the best way to exit too is there's a little I on the top right. Information. Click on that. Then scroll down and hit exit. You can exit that way. Or you can just close out of your browser. So completely up to you. But we will remain here to answer any last minute questions.
Thanks, everyone. Hope that helped.
Yeah, it was good. And then, as I said, we will get this out, the video, to everyone else.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, about 45 people altogether. But because of religious reasons and school board issues and stuff like that, some people just could not make it, which is okay.
So Jose said he didn't have his mic or webcam. Sherry said thank you very much. Jim said thank you. Sherry asked, is Shindig free? Jose said thank you. So everyone's saying thank you.
All right, cool. I see them going. All right, that's good. And then, Chris, I will send you Sean's email, or you can, or because then you can talk to him.
I pulled Sean's email from the attendance list and I shot him an email for the link when he got kicked out originally. So he's got, we connected via email. Yep.
Very good.
Great.
Okay. All right, Sean, I'm sure you are tired and you can depart, so I'm going to drop you off the stage.
All right. Thanks, Saul.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're moving along okay. I got, it seemed I do like this baseboard a lot easier for some reason to keep up with things, as opposed to, this worked a lot easier for me.
I think we gotta, I gotta set up, something that pops up for people on how to activate their webcam, because I think it's important to the event. And reiterating it is one thing, but I think there should be a little pop-up when they get in, like, hey, or like a reminder every 5 minutes if they haven't done so. Hey, notice you haven't had your webcam. To be fully interactive, here's how you do it, right? And they can click on it and it'll walk them through how to set up their webcam. Because you notice, like someone like Sherry, she was in the room, she had her webcam on, she was chatting with people in a small group, she was chatting in the IM, she came up and asked a question, and that's because she had her webcam on, her mic was going. So everyone, there was other folks that had that, but the ones who didn't, we missed out 2 opportunities there to bring them up on stage. So
that's something we need to know, and I got to keep, keep reminding people as I go along with that thing too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I satisfied.
Knowledgeable guy.
Oh yeah, those guys are good, and it's kind of interesting. Tom Becker is unreal with the stuff he does. He was, as I said, so far out in front of this stuff. So that school she mentioned, I'm pretty sure he was designers of it. Because
she said she was in. Oh, really? And that's your brother-in-law?
Yeah. I know. I just, I'm trying to emulate Trump.
Oh,
Family, you know what I mean?
yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you.
Right. So, all right, cool, man. So I'll let you go because it's been a long day for you, and it's been a long day for me, and I got to finish
Yeah.
a chapter of a book that is due by the end of this month on design thinking.
You told me
So,
that last week, my friend.
Yeah, I know, but I
You
got
got to
some
get
of-
this done, man. You got to get it done. You're procrastinating.
I'm up to 3,500 words, so I got to get it
All
to
right.
7,000. Okay. Hey, have fun, sir.
All right, man.
We'll see. I'll be in
Thank you for
touch.
tonight. Good job.
Right on. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Hey, Renee, how are you?